Hello boys and girls, welcome to my channel. I'm for Classic and welcome to BenchART. So today we have in here a new surprise game coming out from Bethesda. This is Oblivion, the Remastered. So in a time where people just want a sequel for Skyrim, this game appeared out of nowhere. There was an event, and everyone was expecting this game to be released in like 1 month, 2 months, a couple of weeks, I don't know. Suddenly, out of nowhere, it ruins entirely my day because it was released today, and so I had to cancel every stuff just to bring you this video today with some good news and some, well, typical bad news. For starting, we are starting in here as usual with 1080p median settings while using FSR quality. First of all, this game does have TSR, but it doesn't allow you to upscale with TSR, which means that you either use CAA or TSR or FXAA natively, but when it comes to upscaling, you can only choose, if you obviously have an AMD card, you can only choose in between AMD FSR or Intel XeSS. I haven't tried Intel XeSS mostly because FSR 3 is doing an amazing job for some reason in this game. I think it's actually pretty good. I'm not entirely sure why it handles so well in this game, but FSR 3 is really the GOAT so if you don't have um, an NVIDIA GPU in this case. For some reason, it just works really well. And so, as for the performance, frame rate wise, I think we are great, but we have a couple of bad news. First of all, I'm playing with a 3600X, Ryzen 5 3600X. I know it's an old CPU and all, and it is still using PCI Express 3 instead of what the RX 6700 XT have, which is a PCI Express 4, but the board only handles 3. So there is a major bottleneck going on in here. So if you look to the GPU usage, you look and see that the GPU is around 70 to 80% in this outside area, and I'm only getting 60 frames per second to 70, which means that if you have a decent CPU with the latest version of the PCI Express or something, I guess what you can expect, in fact, it should be something like 85 frames per second or 80, so a boost of 10 FPS if you don't have kind of a bottleneck. But if you have a CPU like this, unfortunately, this is what you're going to get. So this type of benchmarks, I decided to take three different approaches. The first one, it was on the open world area. The second area, it is inside the dungeons, since it's the most important moment of the game. And just like Skyrim and other titles, it just performs very well on the dungeon, so I'm having a near above 100 frames per second with no issues. And a little bit more forward into the video, I will show you the city, which is where the CPU really goes nuts and you start to have frame rates under 60 frames per second. Unfortunately, since this is an Unreal Engine 5 title, fortunately when it comes to shader compilation, there are some shader compilation issues, but they are really brief and very small. I think most of the issue with this game, it is either my CPU, but I don't think it is, because I've seen other videos on YouTube from other people with stronger CPUs where there is traversal stuttering. So the typical Unreal Engine 5 thing, it is happening in here in the Oblivion Remastered. Even on the consoles, they do suffer a little bit with these stutters. I'm not sure if it is worse on the PC or not, but I mean, I wouldn't be surprised if on PC it was worse. But yeah, there is traversal stuttering in here, and honestly, I'm starting to be really concerned that if Bethesda, yeah, I know it's nothing great, but I'm starting to be concerned in the sense that CD Projekt Red with their new Witcher and Crystal Dynamics with supposedly a new Tomb Raider or any new open world area might have big issues on PC and consoles because of Unreal Engine 5 when CD Projekt Red are their Red Engine, which was very stable, when Crystal Dynamics had their own engine, which worked pretty great despite demanding. None of these titles had stuttering issues or traversal stuttering or stuff like that, and all these studios decided to migrate to Unreal Engine 5, and even these very high-profile games still have issues with stuttering. So I'm a little bit concerned with that because developers kind of found ways to fix shader compilation, but we are still suffering from other types of stuttering, which is pretty sad in that sense. So as you can see in the middle of the city, you can actually see frame rates dipping down from the 50s in here with the median settings. So unfortunately the 3600X, well, it's not really great if you want to sustain a 60 frames per second inside this game. So I also decided to raise a little bit the settings to the high settings. So on the left we have 1080p high settings with FSR on its quality mode. On the middle screen we have 1080p high with TAA, so no upscaling. And on the right we have 1080p ultra settings with TSR. And basically the way that I see it, both high settings with FSR and without FSR perform very similar. Alright, this is mostly because we are GPU bottlenecked, and as you can see, if you look to the GPU usage, the GPU usage on the 1080p native is, slightly higher than the 1080p with FSR, but still we are bottlenecked in both results, so it's mostly the same when it comes to the performance. It's really on the 1080p Ultra that it is different. So as you can see on the dungeon, you can clearly see a big difference in performance in between 1080p Ultra to the 1080p High with FSR or without FSR. So if you move on to the city, when I'm starting to go and cause a little bit of mayhem, chaos, whatever you want to call it, as you can see again, 1080p high with FSR or without FSR performs mostly the same, and it is Ultra that performs worse than the rest. But as soon as I start to swing my swords, uh, all the settings just drop immensely to the around 40s, 50s. So it doesn't really matter because all the settings really get GPU bottlenecked in here. So it is what it is in my opinion. Okay, so I think it's time to move on to 1440p and see how it is supposed to run this game. Well, here it is, so 1440p. Let's start with median settings with FSR free in its quality mode. So essentially we are upscaling at around 900p or something to 1440p while using the median settings, and I believe that we are actually a little bit bottlenecked in here, even at 1440p while using upscaling. But still, the frame rate it is pretty good. It is above 60 in that sense, so I don't think that there is an issue with that. I do think that the median settings it is kind of the best option in here when it comes to CPU related demandingness. Of course, if I had to play it through myself, I would probably find something in between the median settings and the high settings. Especially try to reduce the CPU settings to median and what is considered to be the graphical settings to the high. But looking to the GPU power usage, we are not bottlenecked at this moment in this specific time. But yeah, during the breach we were bottlenecked. So let's just pick up the bow in here and see what we can do with the enemies, just like we saw at 1080p, and let's see if the game gets more demanding near this entrance for this cave. Alright, so let's pick up a fight in here. Oh my god, the guy is going away. So as you can see, GPU usage is never maxed out, so probably because of PCI Express 3 or I don't know, CPU not being enough for this game. We are a little bit bottlenecked at 1440p median settings with FSR free. Here it is, the guy taking a different path to try to take us for some reason. Oh, I'm not very good with this. I'm sorry. We can see some trails in here because of the FSR. There is some ghosting. Alright, it's dealt with. Alright. So it isn't really bad. So let's move just on to the cave. So inside the cave, we are GPU bound in here mostly, judging by the GPU usage and GPU power usage. But frame rate performance is, well, it's over the top. It's pretty much 120 frames per second, 110. So it doesn't pose any issues to run in here decently. So I think it's pretty fine in that sense, as expected. So just like Skyrim and just like at 1080p, I don't see any issues with running the caves. It's just really the open world area that it is more demanding to both GPU and also CPU in that sense. So yeah, I think I will just proceed on to the probably the other settings. So what do you think about it? In fact, not other settings. Let's just try the city first before moving on to other settings. And again, a bottleneck going on in here. 73% of GPU usage, even at 1440p. With median settings, there is a bottleneck going on. So let's just cause a little bit of mayhem in here. I'm sorry, boy. It's just for benchmarking. Don't. Oh my god, that's the typical junkiness of Oblivion. We are so back, guys. Even with Unreal Engine 5, this is just amazing. Okay, so and yeah, again, just when there is a lot of mayhem in here, we just get to 50s and it can drop as low as 45. So yeah, so let me just show you other settings in here. So this time around, I'm just showing you off 1440p high settings on the left with FSR free in its quality modes, and on the right it's just 1080p with TAA, so no upscaling. And we can start to see that the bottleneck is starting to be removed from the GPU, since there is a performance difference in the two settings of about 10 frames per second. Alright, so that's what you should know. 1440p with native resolution, it starts to penalize the GPU instead of the CPU. Now let's move on and check it out the dungeons in here very quickly. Let's just proceed a little bit more forward in here just to see if... Yeah, it's about 10 frames per second difference outside. Yeah, forget about the dungeons. The dungeons doesn't really matter. On the city, as you can see, yeah, it seems to be kind of a difference in there, but there might be nothing at all. Now, just for fun, I want to show you 4K. I just want to show you how it looks. I don't care about the performance in here, I just want to show you if it is too potato to play with low settings, and to be honest, it isn't. 4K low settings, I mean, let's just focus on the low settings. It still retains most of its artistic style, so there is shadows, there is lumen, there is reflections. Most of the textures doesn't really look really bad at the low settings, which is pretty cool. Now pop-in is quite visible, as you can see in the entrance of this village in here, the Hei. You can see a lot of grass popping in and everything. These little leaves drawing in front of you. So that's really what you can expect from this potato-ish setting. Even grass is... everything is just drawing in front of you, which is a little bit sad in that sense. Let me just show you how the caves look. So about the caves, all of them looks much less shaded, so everything seems very bright in here. So something is wrong. That's really you that you are playing at low settings. But honestly, really, that's just it. It's just more lit and less shaded. If you really needed to play at low settings, I don't think you would complain with that. Also, there is no fog, as I can see. For example, on the medium settings and the low settings, the caves are much more foggy and dark, and this one it isn't. It's just more static, you know. But still, I mean, if you don't have a PC that can run this game decently, it's just, yeah, it's a detail that you are losing. But if you are playing at low settings, you know that you will lose something. But I mean, most of the aspects of this, it's still here, and even at 4K low settings in here, you still have reflections. You don't lose really the volumetric effects. As far as I can tell, it's really the big loss in this cave. So everything looks so much more lit, like I said. It looks to lose a lot of atmosphere in that sense. But let's just check it out the village. I mean the city. So the city, it is, well, what a surprise. Bottlenecked in here with 88%, 90s. So yeah, but as you can see, the core visual of the low settings, it is still really good. You aren't really losing too much stuff in here, so it's pretty good. And of course, we aren't even losing the bottleneck in here, despite it is running somewhat much better. Okay, so let's move on to my recommended 4K setting in here. So my recommended setting for 4K is really, you guessed it, it's median settings again, but this time with FSR on its balanced mode. Forget about 60 frames per second. What you're going to get with this setting, it is a very stable 30 frames per second lock if you want to lock it at 30. What can I say? It just looks fabulous. Uh, Good enough in my opinion, and you keep most of the core visual art style. I would probably raise the textures to high if your RAM it is enough and not an issue, but yeah, just forget about 60. On these outside areas it can drop as low as 40 frames per second. During caves you will just get something like above 60 frames per second in here. And still I'm guessing that it should be very easy to drop below than 60 in these caves, but it should provide you an experience mostly around the 60. But yeah, caves differ a lot. There are caves that are visually much more appealing than this one, don't get me wrong. So it's probably that it's going to drop below 60, but like I said, this is a good candidate for 30, which means that inside the caves you will be locked to 30 none of the less. So let's take a look on my final setting over here of 4K. So it's essentially 4K with the eye settings and using FSR on its quality mode. I don't really recommend this setting because it's probably easy that you won't be able to maintain 30 frames per second with this setting in many occasions, but I just want to show you how close, I mean how through the majority of the time it just runs above than 30. Alright, but it is to be expected that in some events with a lot of action in the outside world, in these open world areas, that you can have an experience below than 30. So it's hard to recommend, but I'm here just to show you that it is possible to play mostly above than 30 with 4K high settings with FSR quality. Alright, I'm just even going to omit the caves and the city, and I'm just going to show you one setting that I did try it out just for fun, which is 1080p. Alright, let's get back to 1080p maximum settings over here, but I did enable Lumen hardware IRT, which means that instead of we are using software Lumen in here, we are actually using hardware Lumen, which it is supposed to have much better reflections on here in Lumen. Let me just jump above this rock. So if I look down, you see that the reflections are still much better, but it still rely a lot on screen space information. It is also to be expected that the Lumen hardware RT, it is much better when it comes to illumination and global illumination. But honestly, I think I need Digital Foundry in here to kind of show me the difference in here. I'm pretty sure that there will be some visible differences, but at the naked eye and just by doing these videos, I don't think it is worth the penalty in performance, which is pretty big and expectable since this is an AMD Radeon from the first RT generation. So RT hardware, it's not really great on AMD, especially on the first gen, and we have the stuttering in there, so I'm assuming that we are also starting to have VRAM issues. Either that or it is just the CPU having big troubles in here. with the hardware RT, which doesn't also surprise me. But I think that's it, guys. So if I had to recommend a setting to play this game, my recommended settings, and despite I'm not showing it in here, it would be probably if you have a Ryzen 5 3600X like me. My recommended setting it would be to play at 1080p and use the eye presets, but try to find what were the settings that are more CPU bound. Alright, like draw distances and stuff like that, cloth simulation, everything that seems to put load on the CPU, I would decrease it to median, and instead of using TAA or FSR, I would play natively at 1080p using TSR just to have the best quality. By doing this, I'm expecting that you can have an experience around 60 frames per second on the open world, with, of course, the typical stutters from Unreal. Inside the caves, you can have an experience above 100, and inside the cities, what can I tell? We are bottlenecked in there. Although, if I wasn't really bottlenecked by the CPU, and if this setting was just too demanding for the GPU, which I don't think it would be, I would probably just use 1080p high with TSR or TAA, and if I had issues to sustain 60 frames per second inside the game, I would probably just enable FSR free on its quality mode, since it does look really good on this game for some reason which I don't understand. So I think that's all that I want to talk about Oblivion Remastered on the RX 6700 XT. Well, that was a lot of tests that I've conducted in here, but I hope I did help to clarify how you can run this game. Alright, so guys, I think that's all. Thank you a lot for watching, and I do hope to see you soon. Goodbye.